Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "We have art in order not to die from reality." This might seem like an exaggeration, but is it really? How much of your day do you devote to watching television or reading a book or scrolling through social media to find something that sparks an emotional response? Listening to music? All of these are forms of art, and it's impossible to imagine life without them. For this podcast, I plan to talk to creative people from all mediums about their creative process, and also about why and how creativity is important to the culture of America. Welcome to the Song of Roland, American Culture at Full Volume, where we turn everything up to 11.
Bill finally says, "I didn't know you didn't know." I said, "Didn't know what?" He said, "That you have the part." And I said, "Bill, no one's told me I have the part." And he said, "Well, I'm telling you." And I said, "Well, that is really nice of you. I really am thrilled to have this part. But this is Warner Brothers was going to release the movie. And they had just gotten Burt Lancaster. And I said to Bill, look, I am really excited to do this, but I know how much pressure you're under to sign somebody different. I just can't thank you enough for wanting me to be in the movie." And he said, "Well, you are going to do the movie." I said, "Look, if anything happens, don't worry. You do make your movie. I'm really thrilled that you would like me to do it." And he said to me with his Scottish accent, he would say, I wrote the movie. I'm directing the movie. If you're not in the movie, there won't be a movie." And I just thought that's the most amazing thing I ever heard. That epitomizes how rare it is to get a job and how rare it is to meet somebody who's basically said, it's you or nobody.
Like most movie fans, I have films that I like to go back and watch again and again every few years. And one of those for me is Local Hero, a Scottish film that was made in 1986. The star of that film is Peter Riegert, and I'm thrilled to be able to interview him for this episode. For those of you who haven't seen Local Hero, you should watch it right away. The story is about a young executive who gets sent to Scotland. He's an oil executive who gets sent to Scotland, and his task is to convince a small town on the Scottish coast to sell so that they can build a big oil complex on this property. And of course, he ends up falling in love with the landscape and changing his mind about why he's there. And Peter Riegert does such an incredible job of making this transition so smoothly and subtly. Instead of overacting, it's a very understated performance where he just shows in a quiet way how this whole landscape transforms him as a person. You'll recognize Peter from other movies like Animal House and The Mask and Crossing Delancey. He's also starred in a lot of some of the most iconic television in our history, so he's a familiar face.
Anyway, how are you? What a nice pleasure to meet you.
You're not going to remember this, but we've met before.
It's so great to see you again.
So I used to live in San Francisco, and I was dating a woman who was neighbors with Carrie Perloff.
Oh, wow.
So I was at a dinner party at Carrie's house, and you happened to be, I don't know if you were there doing a play or...
Do you remember when it was?
It would have been about 2000, I think.
Uh, Actually, 2001, I was doing a play. It was
Okay.
right around 9/11.
Okay.
Yeah, I was doing two Pinter plays. Uh, and then I directed something there in 2003-ish, I want to say, something like that.
It was a nice evening. I remember that much
I'm
anyway.
sorry my brain is
So,
addlepated.
well, why don't you start by telling me, was there any particular series of events or incidents that led you to want to become an actor?
I grew up in New York City, so the theater, or I mean, as early as I can remember, maybe the circus or rodeo, uh, baseball games, and then movies and theater. That was a big part of growing up in New York City.
Yeah.
Then we moved when I was about 7.5 to a small town in Westchester called Ardsley. And I was always going to the theater. I did a play in high school. I did a play in college, but I never put two and two together. I never, it never came to me that I should be an actor. Um, uh, I thought about it. I don't know why I thought about it because nobody in the family was an actor. I mean, I think my father's father did some time in vaudeville as like a song and dance person, but I don't. That was like one of those odd stories that you'd hear, and I it didn't compute in terms of my genes go. I have show business genes, but I didn't really begin until or made a commitment until January 1st of 1971. I literally awoke to a almost like an idea. When my eyes opened up, I literally said to myself, "I'm going to be an actor." Not, I didn't speak out loud, but in my head, whatever thoughts I ever had about being in show business came to fruition on that day, and it was really strong. It was a real powerful thought, enough to make me not procrastinate. I mean, I called up a friend who I went to college with, and I said, and I knew he was trying to be an actor, and that's how it began. He explained to me what the trades were and where you saw auditions and what a picture and a resume was. I mean, I was as wet behind the ears as you can get, but I was at an audition the next day, um, and it was for something off Broadway, and I got a job in about 6 weeks, and it was fast. And then I just was lucky. I got became part of an improvisational workshop that became a company in 1972. And I didn't go to drama school or I didn't have an acting guru. In my mind's eye, I was going to apprentice myself to the profession, which I figured is how it began. The people that I really liked as actors from the movies or theater, especially movies. I don't remember them going to acting school. Not that I was being willfully avoiding it, but I didn't have time to waste. My dad said to me, or my folks said to me, "Do you want money to go to drama school?" And I said, I can't take your money anymore. I gotta learn how to live on my own, or I'll be an indentured servant for the rest of my life. So I was I had crazy courage, and I just went after it.
You did quite a bit of theater then, I assume. Did you like did you prefer theater to film and television, or I know a lot of actors feel strongly about that.
It really was. There was so much theater in New York, and my improvisational company, or not mine, but the group I was part of was a group called War Babies, and we functioned with 10 people, but we could work with five. So if you got a job and made money, whether it was the theater or a TV show or a movie, you could go off and do it and come back to the improv group. So for 8 years, I had a place to work at least once a week, which is really how I learned how to act. I didn't really have a preference. The movies and in my day when you started out, you never did television. If you wanted a serious acting career, television was considered it was very snobbish. You didn't do a series, you didn't do movies of the week, you didn't do soap operas, you didn't do commercials. Now it's all changed. Nobody seems to give a shit. So.
So many good series now too. The
There's
quality of
almost
this.
yeah, the quality. Television is not what we remember as television. It's now a delivery device for all kinds of interesting stuff. I mean, Cornelia is always finding something fascinating, and I think it's like YouTube or the internet in general. It's like the Alexandrian library. It has everything. I mean, it's a monster of a machine. It's destroying our culture. But if you're interested in serious research or curiosity, the things you can find are pretty extraordinary.
So how did Animal House come about?
I was in California. I had just finished an 8-month run in an off Broadway play by a new playwright named David Mamet. And it was called Sexual Perversity in Chicago. And I did it for 8 months at the Cherry Lane Theater. And my girlfriend at the time, we had just started dating, and she had to be out in LA. So 8 months of one play was plenty for me. And I had gotten a job doing a pilot for a television show. I think it was called Off Campus with Mary Lou Henner, Josh Mostel, Chip Zien, other interesting people from my generation. And I remember seeing the pilot and I just thought, oh my God, please don't pick this thing up. And I remember thinking, wow, you don't want to be part of something that you hope fails. You want to hope it succeeds. Anyway, it didn't succeed. I think I was paid $2,500. Anyway, we went out to California. She was out there, and I joined her in February of '77. And I had an agent out there from William Morris, and a guy named Eddie Bondi was fantastic. And they were sending me out on stuff. And there was a period of about a month or two where it seemed to be between me and somebody else. So it was encouraging because I felt, all right, I'm getting close. And then in the summer of '77, I auditioned for Animal House and got the job. And it just was a regular audition. But I was competing against God knows how many hundreds of people my age. Now, and I was 30 when I did Animal House, but I looked so young, I could get away with it.
So was that a pretty wild experience filming that? It was in Oregon, right?
Yeah, we shot it in Eugene, Oregon. It was a week of supposed rehearsal, it was just the members of the fraternity getting stoned and drunk and getting into fights and stuff like that. But it was 6 weeks shooting, 30 days. We finished the first week in December, and it was I had done a couple of episodes of MASH before then, so I had already worked with a professional crew, but this was the first big part, really.
Yeah.
And it's the learning curve is enormous. And I had, Tim Matheson was a great mentor in a way because he'd been acting since he was a teenager. So he knew how it all worked. And I just learned from him. I don't mean the acting part, I mean just how business works and how you negotiate and, all the secret sauce that goes into a career. And, that was, like I said, we finished in December of 77, and then it came out in July of 78, and nobody knew how successful it was going to be. And that was bizarre because I was used to success in the theater, which means the only people who were stopping you on the street had to have seen the play. So, what are the odds of bumping into somebody is very small. But in Animal House, everybody saw Animal House. So, it was very disconcerting to be recognized. It distracted me. It took a couple of months to understand what was happening. I just happened to stumble into something that was incredibly successful. That's the luck part of business because nobody knows what's going to be a hit.
I suppose everyone was pretty surprised at what a huge hit that was, right?
Well, not only was it surprising, but there was Hollywood or the movie business, which was mostly Hollywood, where they weren't making anything for young people. That really started with the Brat Pack about 5 years later. It took that long for them to start realizing that the powers that be that there was this gargantuan audience, and you started to see a lot more high school movies and college movies and just general stories for younger people. And I always think of it where the juvenile became the leading man or the juvenile became the leading woman. Once upon a time, if you went to the movies, the men and women, the stars looked like adults. They didn't look like kids. Now they all look like kids, especially now in
Right.
78. So that's,
Never thought about that Animal House kind of broke the mold for that whole genre.
I mean, if you think back, 71 was The Godfather. So that changed the perception of gangster stories, right? That was suddenly a new deal. Then Jaws changed the ideas about horror movies, I guess, monster movies in the form of a shark. And of course, it altered everything because of how much money it made. And then Star Wars changed everything about science fiction. And then Animal House changed everything about comedy. You know, it cracked open the culture, as it were.
By the way, one of my favorite things about your relationship with Cornelia is that she calls you animal spouse. I
Yeah,
think that's hilarious.
it protects me. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about Local Hero because that's just one of my favorite movies of all time, and I wonder how that came about and whether it was. I mean, it just seems like one of those films that must have been so fun to work on. The scenery and the setting and the cast. It was just such a unique film.
Well, I think if I've always thought of every movie job, with the rarest of exceptions, there's so much fun to do. And my fantasy because I'd been seeing foreign films since I was a kid. My folks were always taking me to bizarre film festivals. And so, looking at French films, Italian films, whatever it was, Japanese films, I was accustomed to that. So my fantasy was to make a movie in every country, which was, kind of impossible. But Local Hero was the first foreign film I had done. And I got a call from my agent letting me know that I was going to have an interview with the director of this movie called Local Hero, a guy named Bill Forsyth. I'd never heard of him. I had never seen Gregory's Girl yet. It was about to be released, but it hadn't been released yet. So they sent me the screenplay. As I recall, I got this phone call on a Monday, and I got it. And American scripts are like 8 by 11, or 8.5 by 11, or whatever the right, like typing paper. But the British script, as I call, was something like 8.5 by 14. It was like long, and it was like 165. It was long. That's a lot of pages. And I thought, now I'll read it later when I get home. And I was single and on my own, and I was out till 5 in the morning. So I get home, and I was subletting my friend Carol Kane's apartment on 67th Street off of Central Park West. And I got home, and I like to read before I go to sleep. So, help tires me out, tires my eyes out. And I started reading the screenplay, and I couldn't put it down. The next thing I knew, it was 7:30 in the morning, and there's not an agent alive who's up at 7:30 in the morning. So I finally reached the agent, and I said, get me a meeting yesterday. It was probably the best screenplay I'd ever read. So I got a call to meet this character, Bill Forsyth, at a restaurant bar in a hotel on Central Park West and 62nd Street. Anyway, I got there around 6 o'clock. There was nobody eating at any of the tables, and there was a guy at the bar who was wearing like a leather jacket that looked like almost fluorescent. And, well, not fluorescent, but it was greenish blue. And I thought, well, that's kind of an odd color. Maybe that's the guy. So I introduced myself, and it was indeed Bill. And we got a table and sat and chatted for probably a couple of hours. Anyway, we're sitting and talking, and I'm trying to get this job. And I said, would you like to go out for drinks later? And he said, I have to meet some more actors. You know how this is. And I said, of course, of course. I just, And I said, how about tomorrow night, Saturday? He said, yeah. Or no, I'm not. Maybe this was Thursday. Friday, he was busy. Saturday night, he said, come after dinner and pick me up, and we'll go somewhere. So I took him to an actor's hangout, which was a big mistake. I didn't even realize it. It was a place called Cafe Central. And all the actors would hang out there. But this was really before the insane paparazzi that we have now. I mean, it existed, but it wasn't so crazy. So I was taking him into a place where it was all my competition. What an idiot I was. Anyway, I picked him up and kept him out till 4 in the morning. We were both drunk, and I figured if I'm the last person he remembers drunk, maybe that's how I'll get the job. I mean, I'm completely making up a scenario that makes no sense. He left the next day, Sunday. Monday, I think I was going out to California for something, Monday or Tuesday. And they set up a screening of Gregory's Girl. Because I thought, can this guy who I've never heard of direct this script, which is so special? So I saw Gregory's Girl, and it was very clear that the script would be in good hands. And I got a call from the agent saying, Bill is very interested. It wasn't. I think my agent spoke to the producer, who was David Putnam, and they Putnam called and said Bill's very interested in Peter, but it's going to take a couple of months to work this out because we have to deal with Warner Brothers and they want a movie star. So I found all this out later after the movie because I was fascinated, you know. And what I learned was Bill probably saw another 50 actors in LA and New York, maybe more. And the conversation was Henry Winkler, Robin Williams, maybe Michael Douglas. I mean, guys my age or about there, and that's what took so long. And indeed, when Bill got home to Scotland on Sunday, his crew, which had made Gregory's Girl and was going to be half of the crew for Local Hero, they were all friends of his who grew up in Glasgow with him. And they said, "So who'd you choose, Henry Winkler or Robin Williams?" And he said, "I found this guy named Peter Riegert. I think I'm going to hire him." And they thought, "Oh my God, this is Bill self-destructing or whatever." Anyway, that's the legend of how I got it. And then the story of how I got it is as magical as the movie because Belushi had died in March of 1982. And I was seeing Bill in January. So 2 months would have been March. So there was a memorial for John at St. John the Divine, of course, John, up on 110th Street in Amsterdam. And after the memorial, I remember walking back down to Cafe Central, this actor hangout, with Bruce McGill, who I did Animal House with, and Carly Simon. So the three of us are walking down. This is such a New York story. And we end up at the cafe having some drinks in John's honor. And I had gotten home, I had gotten a call from Bill saying, "Would you meet me at the Carlisle Hotel? I'm going to be in New York. You want to meet for drinks around 5 o'clock on this particular Wednesday." So he must have called me Monday. And I said, "Sure, absolutely." And then I got a call from David Putnam's office saying David's going to be in New York with Bill having drinks at the Carlisle. Would you? And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I'm fine." The night before my meeting with Bill and David Putnam at the Carlisle, I got a call from a woman named Joan Goodman, who is a reporter. This is a long answer to your question, but you can cut out what you want. Anyway, I had met Joan Goodman in 1977. My girlfriend at the time was Bette Midler, and she was doing an interview with Joan Goodman, and I was entertaining Joan when, while Bette was getting ready for the interview. So 5 years later, on a Tuesday, I got a call from, this is the day before this meeting with Bill, right, and the producer. And she called up to say, "I just spoke with the casting director, Susie Figgis, from England, from Britain. And Susie told Joan that I got the part in Local Hero." And the reason she was calling me was Joan, recommended me to Bill. She was interviewing Bill for the release of Gregory's Girl and said to him, "What's next?" And he described Local Hero. And Joan said, have you met an actor named Peter Riegert?" And he said, I don't know who that is. So that's how I was recommended to Bill. Yeah. So she calls me Tuesday to congratulate me on getting the job. And I said, "Well, no one's told me I have the job yet, Joan." She said, "Oh my God, I hope I haven't done anything wrong." And I said, No, it's very sweet of you to tell me. I'm just telling you that no one's told me I have the job. But thank you very much. And that was like 10:30 at night. on Tuesday night. So we hung up, and again, it's 10:30. Who am I going to call? There's no one to call and say, "Did I get
Yeah.
this job?" So that night, Wednesday night after the memorial, and Carly and John and Bruce and I were having drinks, I go to the Carlisle, and it's probably 5, 6 o'clock, and there's Bill Forsyth, David Putnam, who I think had just won or was about to win the Academy Award for the movie about the runners, Chariots of Fire. Okay. So there's Bill, there's David, and they introduced me to this guy named Mark Knopfler, who I was a big fan of because of Dire Straits. And I didn't know that Mark was writing this music for the movie. So we're talking for, about an hour in Bettleman's Bar, this famous bar in the Carlisle Hotel, which is this romantic New York place. I mean, the setting was ridiculous. So after about an hour, Mark Knopfler looks at me and says he's got to go, shakes my hand, and he said he's finishing an album down in the village, and he said, "I'll see you in Scotland. You're going to be fantastic." And he leaves. So this is the second person that's told me I'm doing this part. David doesn't say anything. Bill doesn't say anything. And after another 15, 20 minutes, David says, "Why don't we go up to my room, have some drinks, talk a little more?" So we go up to the room and we're making small talk. And I said, "David, I don't want to be rude, but I really would like this job, but I'd rather know sooner than later that I don't have this job because it's very stressful. I mean, I know that I'm being considered." And he said, I promise you'll know Friday. This is Wednesday night.
Jeez. Oh God.
So he said, "I promise you'll know Friday." I said, "Oh, that's great.
Uh,
Okay. I'd like to be done with worrying or, whatever." So I get up to leave, and Bill said, "Let's get a drink." So a lot of drinking, as you can imagine, in Scotland. So I say goodnight to David. Bill and I go downstairs back to the bar, or maybe it was in the restaurant. We just got tables no, it was probably in the restaurant. And he's not a talker, Bill, and I wasn't going to open my mouth anymore. So the waiter comes. He ordered probably two single malt whiskeys. I'm guessing something Scottish. And the waiter takes our order, and again, I'm not saying anything. And Bill finally says, "I didn't know you didn't know." I said, "Didn't know what?" He said, "That you have the part." And I said, "Bill, no one's told me I have the part." And he said, "Well, I'm telling you." And I said, "Well, that is really nice of you. I really am thrilled to have this part, but this is Warner Brothers was going to release the movie, and they had just gotten Burt Lancaster." And I
okay.
said to Bill, "Look, I am really excited to do this, but I know how much pressure you're under to sign somebody different. I just can't thank you enough for wanting me to be in the movie." And he said, "Well, you are going to do the movie." I said, "Look, if anything happens, don't worry. You do make your movie. I'm really thrilled that you would like me to do it." And he said to me with his Scottish accent, he would say, I wrote the movie. I'm directing the movie. If you're not in the movie, there won't be a movie." And I just thought that's the most amazing thing I ever heard. That was like that was epitomizes how rare it is to get a job and how rare it is to meet somebody who's basically said it's you or nobody. That's pretty rare. And this was a big budgeted film for him. His movies he made for $500,000. This was going to be $5, $6 million. Anyway, that's how I got Local Hero. In answer to
Good.
your short question, my long answer.
So was the shoot just magical or
As
yeah.
magic, the making the movie basically was the magical experience that my character has by going to Scotland, in which his life has changed. Every day was extraordinary. Everyone was at the top of their game. It was it was just a creative. Every day was just a creative day, and I was almost in every scene, so I was working all the time. And we're shooting in the Highlands of Scotland, which is already magical. The light that you saw in the movie is that. So I would say I've been really fortunate that most of the jobs I've done have been always special. I mean, when we made Animal House, we didn't know its success. We didn't know it was going to be the blockbuster it was. And with Local Hero, we knew we had something special, but we didn't know what its success was going to be. And it's gone on to have a very vociferous following. For those who like it, they really like it.
It's one of those cult classics that
I guess,
yeah.
yeah, I guess so. But that also opened up all. I mean, I've done 12 movies in different countries, so my fantasy somewhat came true.
So, you directed one feature film, The King of the Corner,
Right.
and that had a pretty great cast. Was that was that a good experience for you?
It was. I directed a short film
Yeah,
first, uh, which was based on an O. Henry short story called By Courier. And it got nominated for an Academy Award of all things.
yeah,
So,
I saw that.
yeah, I mean, I thought, my God, I've been on the wrong side of the camera for 30 years. What the hell's going on here? And then I did the feature was with Isabella Rossellini, Eli Wallach, Eric Bogosian, Dominic Chianese, Harris Yulin, Beverly D'Angelo, Rita Moreno. It was an amazing cast. And I couldn't find a distributor. So I basically did it on my own. Took it around the country, went to 27 cities. It was a fantastic experience.
Didn't have any opportunities to do that again, or you didn't want to, or what?
Well, that's how I met Cornelia. I met Cornelia because I optioned her first book.
Okay,
Yeah. So I got a marriage, not a movie. So do it. I wrote a screenplay. A friend helped me, Sarah Sugahara. She worked on it. And I found actors to play the part. The leading part is a young woman, 25 years old. Did you read Field of Darkness, Cornelia's book, Field of
did
Darkness?
not know.
It's the character who's in all four books. I
Okay,
mean, she's went on to write three other books with the same character, Madeline Dare. I think it would be
read
an
one of them.
amazing series going back to our original conversation. A streaming because you can devote 8, 10 episodes to a book now. So I hope to be able to find somebody who will option the book and turn it into a series. It's a great part for a young woman to play. And she ages 25, 27, 29, 31. So you could do it. And it's that would be a wonderful thing to have happen.
Has it been good to be involved with somebody who's also a creative person? Because I know in my life it's always been important for me to have people that are supportive of and willing to work with me when I'm going through there's so many highs and lows in the any kind of arts. So
Yeah, I think Cornelia and I match up in terms of not just being supportive of one another, but we like to talk. We're talkers, and we discuss. It's not like there's a small amount of things to talk about. There's always something going on. I mean, that's why I was late to the party here, because Cornelia and I were discussing, real estate, which is an endlessly fascinating conversation. We live up in the country, but do we want to go back to New York? And all it's as long as you can. Why not? One of my favorite lines in movies is the Maltese Falcon when the fat man Gutman tells Sam Spade, "I like talking with a man who likes to talk." That's me. I like to talk to people who like to talk, and Cornelia likes to talk. So we're two kibitzers.
That's great. But speaking of favorite lines, I forgot to mention my favorite line, or at least one of them in Local Hero, was when you were standing with that group of people and you said, "Whose baby is that?"
Well, that scene, we pretty much stuck to the script, but every once in a while somebody would have an idea. And Bill, amazingly, never stopped anybody from giving an idea, whether they were actors or or parts of the crew or any just somebody had an idea. He was very comfortably open. And I noticed that anytime anyone had a suggestion, he would shoot the idea. And I said to him one day, "Why do you do that? Why do you somebody comes up and you are in conversation, they have an idea and you seem to just go ahead and shoot it." And he said, "Because it's faster to shoot an idea than to debate an idea," which I thought was great. And anyway, that particular day, the scene with it's basically a scene of me meeting the townspeople and learning that they have lots of jobs. They're shocked that I have one. And there was a character, one of the actors was wheeling a baby. The baby always seemed to be, in Bill's movies, there are things that go on with no explanation. So I said we shot the scene as it were, laid out as you saw it, and Bill was going off to check or change a lens or move the camera, or do something. And I said to the guys, "Why don't we? What if I ask you whose baby this is?" And it's the town scandal. And of course, these Scottish actors make pickpockets look normal. I mean, I had my work cut out for me working with these guys. They were so incredible, all of them, men and women. So Bill comes back, and I said, "Listen, after when the dialogue is over, can you give us about a minute? I think we've got something for you." And he looked at me with that look that I'd become familiar with, and he just nodded. And he went back, and we ran the scene again. And I said, "Whose baby?" And everybody reacted the way you saw it. And Bill came back and moved, made sure that three people were caught and two people, he rearranged the shot. It was essentially the same, in which we were all included, and he never said anything about whether he liked it or didn't like it. He was true to himself. It was faster to do it than to debate it. Anyway, that's how it came to be. It's a great moment in the movie.
Because then it's the best part about it is that it's never addressed again. Like
Oh,
the mystery is never
no,
solved.
yeah, like life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the casting for that movie was just fabulous. Everybody fit perfectly. So I wanted to ask you about you've been in a lot of some of the most iconic television shows in history, MASH and Succession and The Sopranos and Seinfeld. What was the best experience out of all those?
The Sopranos was probably, I don't know if the best experience is the right word, but it has, it's such a powerful show, and I got to do 6 episodes. I mean, it was a really
Yeah.
fun thing to do. James Gandolfini was a very, very special
Mm.
actor and person. He was a really special human being, and it was great to meet. I mean, he had little pieces here and there. It's always fun to be part of something that you can say you were in the cast of,
Yeah,
whether it was
absolutely.
Succession. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Succession must have been fun too.
Well, I got a call. It was during COVID, so I had grown this enormous beard, not by design. I just was lazy. We weren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Uh, so I got a call from the agent saying that I was offered this part. I certainly knew what Succession was. As a matter of fact, Jeremy Strong was the my assistant on my feature, the feature I directed.
Oh, wow.
He was just getting started in 2003, I guess. I mean, he'd been, you know, working on his career, but he worked with me as my assistant on the movie. Anyway, so I said to the agent, ask them, I have a beard. Do they want me to shave the beard? So they asked if I could send them a picture. So I sent them a picture of what I looked like, and they said, keep it, don't touch it. And I didn't know why until I read the scene, and it was, that scene with James Cromwell, and I'm his old left wing friend from when they were kids. So that turned out great, and they love to let the actors improvise. So once I saw that it was okay to improvise, I just was yakking my brains out. They didn't use any of it, but it was just kind of fun.
It was a great scene. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about how you see the role of the arts in our culture. We're in a place right now, as you know, where the arts are on tenuous ground and there's just a lot of madness going on. So how do you see our role in all of that?
I think the arts, the spectrum of whether it's choreography, music, sculpture, paintings, acting, whatever. There's a reason why human beings created art, and it was a way to express themselves when they might not have had the words. And, the human being has been painting on the sides of caves since 40,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago. So it's obviously an expression of need. I think the arts are an antidote to any troubling time you're going through. It's hard to imagine what people did before there was radios and television or even
Yeah.
theater. I mean, very rare.
Yeah.
It was rare to see a painting. It was rare to read a book. So the power of the arts internationally is at its height. But I think the arts, one of its functions is to ask questions. And if you're living under a repressive regime, like we are right now in the United States, you know, the arts are under threat because its function is to ask questions. And we have elected officials who don't want us to ask questions. That's what I feel is going on right now. If you're essentially banning or burning books, pick it, closing down libraries, uh, making it harder for people to gather, it's because they're afraid of people asking questions. So, I mean, that's a large answer. of the function of art, but that is for me. I'm reminded of what it is to be a human being when I listen to music or when I watch a movie. It enlightens me to the times I'm living in and who I am as a person.
Yeah, and it makes sense that they would be afraid of that because who they are is so frightening, and
Well,
they don't want
any autocracy, or any bullying situation, the biggest threat is somebody in the group saying, "I think there's another way."
right, exactly.
I mean, I think
So,
it's reached its extreme in the United States right now. But I'm old enough to remember the McCarthy era. I remember Vietnam. It's the civil rights movement. It's not like we haven't been through rough water before. It's just this is a rather challenging time where a large part of the population is afraid for reasons they don't even know why they're afraid.
yeah,
I think when
so
I those plays I was doing for Carrie Perloff in San Francisco at ACT, those were Pinter plays, and Pinter is a writer who exposes the terror of being taken away by the unknown. I mean, he's gone, he's passed away, but his plays and screenplays are very vital still, and they speak literally to what we're talking about here.
yeah, absolutely.
Name, nameless fear. Even if
Mm,
you can, I can sense it. Not just in me and Cornelia, but my family, my friends, my neighbors. When a part of the population, a large part of the population, is afraid, something's wrong.
so what are you working on? Do you have anything coming up?
I'm reluctant to talk about it, but I'm working on trying to follow through on an idea. The hard part is really finishing it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but anytime you make something, I think the hardest part is finishing it. Whether it's a bookcase or a book, it doesn't really matter.
It's really true.
What are you working on?
I just released a new book, actually.
Oh, well,
It's memoir called Be a Man. It's actually about growing up in the West as a male and the unique challenges that presents. So,
well, I would
yeah,
say that's a challenge no matter where you are.
absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a universal story, but
Oh yeah.
because I live out here, it's.
And are you in Chicago? I can't remember.
No, I live in Montana,
Oh my God, where in Montana?
in Billings.
Billings. Yeah, I had a friend who was married in Helena.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
so I've only been
capital.
out there once, and it was spectacular.
Yeah, it is spectacular. I
I
feel
finally
pretty lucky to
understood.
live
Yeah, I finally understood what Big Sky Country meant.
here. Right? Yeah.
Uh,
It's not just a name, it's true. Yeah.
Well, I saw, an evening sky, and I remember going, "Oh my God!" And they say,
Yeah.
"Yeah, that's what we've been singing about all these years."
Well, Peter, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And
Well,
it's been a pleasure.
I'm very flattered to be asked, Russell. I really,
Yeah, it's fun talking to people.
yeah. Well,
Well,
it's it's a way of keeping the temperature of what you're going through, because it's very tempting to think we're doing this alone, and we're not.
exactly.
There's more of us than them, as they say.
Got to keep making those connections.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Anyway, thank you so much.
And tell Cornelia hello.
I will.
Okay.
All
Thanks
right,
a lot,
Bill.
man.
My
Take care.
pleasure. All the best.
I want to thank Peter Riegert for taking the time to talk to me today. It's been a pleasure. And I want to thank my son Fletcher for providing some of the transitional music for this episode. And thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Song of Roland.